Hi, I'm Shan Wu with a Under Color of Law hot take on Attorney General Merrick Garland being cited for contempt of Congress. Now, he is actually the third Attorney General in modern times, I think, being cited for contempt. There was Eric Holder, William Barr, and now Garland. Why is he being cited for contempt? Let's break it down a little bit. It's because he won't turn over the audio recordings of Special Counsel Robert Hur interviewing President Biden. Now, seems like ancient history now, but Hur interviewed Biden over Biden's handling of classified documents when he was the vice president, actually after he left as well, not when he was president. And Hur had been appointed a special counsel by Merrick Garland. Don't think Garland needed to do that actually, but he did. And after interviewing and looking at all the evidence, Hur declined to bring criminal charges because there was no evidence of a crime. But Hur did manage to do a little political slur against President Biden, describing him at one point as being a well-meaning elderly man with a bad memory, something like that. So naturally, that's very helpful to the Trump campaign, who wants to point out that they think Biden is very incoherent, he has a bad memory, all that kind of nonsense. So why does Congress want the audio tape? Keep in mind, they already have the transcript. And when I say Congress, I really mean the Republican House members. They already have the transcript, but obviously an audio could be very helpful. They claim they want the audio to compare the accuracy to the transcript. But of course, what they're hoping for is maybe President Biden sounds bad on the audio, maybe he stumbles over his words, hesitant, whatever it is. They would like to use that in a political way. So DOJ, through Merrick Garland, has refused to turn it over, but they did already give the transcript. Now, probably didn't even have to do that. I agree with Representative Nadler, who says that he thinks Garland should not be held in contempt. He's already been really helpful. DOJ has made that point that they've turned over a lot of information to Congress, and Nadler says he actually thinks maybe Garland was a little bit too helpful. And they'll put that up from the New York Times where Nadler says that. And I agree that he's probably been too helpful. I think it's because Garland is always a little bit too fearful of looking like he's being partisan, not being cooperative, not being transparent. He could have exercised a lot of greater oversight over Robert Hur as well. Because even though Hur is a special counsel, reminder, under the DOJ regs, he still works within the context of DOJ, and therefore the Attorney General has oversight over him. But I think Garland was, again, too fearful of looking partisan. He didn't have to let that sort of political smear be put in Hur's report. And he could have refused to give over the transcripts, too. There's a lot of discretion you can utilize in what kind of a public report goes out, and it could have been pretty skeletal. Here's what we examined, here's the people we interviewed, and there's no criminal action here, so we're going to decline to prosecute. But instead, he allowed the report to go out, it seems, pretty much unredacted, and so it's had this great political boon to the Republicans. Now, you'll see that in seeking the audio, there's all sorts of kind of poor reasons that the Republicans give for wanting that audio. They want to make it sound like it's part of their impeachment inquiry against President Biden. So let's take a listen here to CNN's Boris Sanchez doing a really great job in kind of taking apart Representative Tiffany, who's giving really weak reasons for why they want this. So take a listen to this for a moment.
Congressman, you have argued that there should be further accountability of not only the president, but his family. This is what you tweeted out after Hunter Biden was convicted just yesterday. You write, quote, "This is just the beginning of holding the Biden crime family accountable. Now let's do Joe Biden." Congressman, what specific charges would you like brought against the president?
This is why we continue to seek the information that we've steadily, methodically put together in the last year and a half with the Oversight Committee. And, when you look at it, we still have the record out there of 20 shell companies, 20 phone calls that Joe Biden made to his son, and over $20 million that flowed through those shell companies. We want to get all that information before the American people, because what happened yesterday in regards to Hunter Biden and the gun crime that he was convicted of, that is just the beginning of making sure that they're held fully accountable. And that actually was the least of the crimes that may have happened here when you look at all this money that's flowed in from foreign countries, including our adversaries like China and Russia.
Congressman, so there are some details there that I don't think reflect the record of what the Oversight Committee's actually put out. In fact, it wasn't $20 million. It was $15 million that went to Biden family associates. And there's no evidence in any of the documents put out by the Oversight Committee that a single dollar went to President Biden when he was in office. Therefore, there's no evidence that he did anything illegal, that he abused his power, or that he abused his power in office to help his family members or friends get wealthy.
Yeah, well, Joe Biden has a check in the amount of $40,000 that has his name on it. You got another $200,000 check that came from Jim and Sarah Biden to him. I mean, there's over $20 million here.
So I actually have that check here. That was a check from 2018 when he was not vice president, and it actually says that this was a reimbursal. This was a loan repayment from his brother.
So you can make the case that the Bidens did not do this while Joe Biden was vice president, but I think it's contrary to the record. And it's contrary to what happened when Joe Biden was vice president and he went and called off the prosecutor in Ukraine in regards to the Burisma investigation.
Sir, that has been debunked. That prosecutor was unanimously disliked by both Republicans and Democrats, and even EU officials said that he was corrupt and they wanted him out. Nevertheless, Congressman, we do have to leave the conversation there. We do appreciate you coming on. We hope you'll come again soon.
Good to join you, Boris.
Now, again, they've already given the transcript, and here's how DOJ and the Biden administration in general was trying to protect Garland from being held in contempt, which failed since they cited him for contempt today. They're arguing that there's executive privilege, which prevents them from turning over the audio. Now, this is a tried and true strategy because they did the same thing with Eric Holder when they wanted Holder to turn over information about a failed ATF gun project called Fast and Furious. When the administration invokes executive privilege, it's a way of taking the official, the AG, out of the hotspot because they're saying they can't turn it over. It's not up to them. It's not they're personally refusing to do what Congress says. There is a legal reason that the administration they work for is telling them you can't turn it over, so you can't shoot the messenger. Now, in this instance, it's going to be litigated. I mean, it always is litigated. And I think in this instance, it's going to hurt the litigation that the transcript was already turned over because the substance has already been given over. So why is the transcript not privileged, but the audio tape is privileged? So that's a problem. But it's an effective strategy because of the time element. If you have to first litigate the executive privilege, that's going to take a really long time. And before you can get to the question of should Garland be held in criminal contempt, which is what Congress wants, you'd have to first get through the executive privilege fight. So let's review for a second what are the kinds of contempt available for Congress, because that's important to understand what they want done here. So there's three kinds of contempt that Congress can utilize, and we'll put up that list for you. There's criminal contempt, there's civil contempt, and there's the much forgotten aspect of inherent enforcement. Congress can inherently enforce contempt. So let's do that in reverse order because the inherent part's kind of fun. Congress has like its own enforcement system, which is totally forgotten about. They have like a marshal who, takes care of their security, but mostly does administrative things. They could actually do it themselves and say someone's in contempt, get them arrested and kind of try and enforce it themselves. It's never done, won't happen here, but that is one available tool to them. The second is civil contempt. That's where the criminal contempt isn't working, that the DOJ is not going to enforce it. So then they can commence a civil suit to try and hold the person in civil contempt. That's fine. They could do that. Again, anything in the civil court is going to take a really long time, which really hurts their real purpose, which is to use this politically right now during the presidential campaign season. So lastly, we get to the criminal contempt, which is what they want done. So the criminal contempt of Congress is a particular statute. We'll put that up for you, but it goes to the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. to decide what to do with it. That's the office that I used to work at. That office is one of the 93 U.S. Attorney's offices. And while we're at it, what is a U.S. Attorney's office? Here's a map we'll put up with 93 of them. There are 93 of them in each of the federal districts. And so a good analogy would be like they're the DA for that federal district. They're the federal DA. In fact, when I was a prosecutor in D.C., lots of times people would think of us as DAs and they'd say you're the federal DA or something like that. It's a good analogy. A little bit different because the actual district attorneys in most states do all the street crime, where the U.S. Attorney's offices don't really prosecute all the street crime. They do purely federal crimes. Now, some of that street crime, bank robbery, for example, but there are two places, good trivia point for you all, where the U.S. Attorney's Office does all the street crime. That's in the U.S. Virgin Islands and, you guessed it, Washington, D.C. One reason why I wanted to go to D.C. was you got a lot more experience. The D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office does everything from shoplifting to street-level prostitution to bank robberies to white-collar crimes to contempt of Congress. So it's a very broad jurisdiction for the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. They also took the lead on all the rioters being prosecuted, the insurrectionists in the January 6th cases as well. So it first will go to the U.S. Attorney's Office to D.C. to make a decision about the criminal contempt against the Attorney General. But all of the U.S. Attorney's offices are within the Justice Department. So who do they answer to? The Attorney General. Really, what the ultimate decision that has to be made here is whether the Justice Department is going to bring a criminal prosecution against the head of the Justice Department. This is an obvious reason why Holder, Barr, and Garland now, in my opinion, they weren't held in criminal contempt because DOJ decided they're not going to prosecute their own boss. Which brings us to sort of maybe a tongue-in-cheek question. Given Garland's propensity for wanting to look really nonpartisan, looking like he's bending over backwards to be completely fair, maybe he'll want to appoint a special counsel to investigate himself. I mean, that would kind of make sense, right? DOJ, how can they really evaluate whether or not to bring a case against their own boss? So maybe he'll appoint a Republican to investigate himself. Again, a little tongue-in-cheek, I don't think he's going to do that. The strategy here is going to be time-tested. They're invoking the executive privilege. That would have to get litigated first. Only then would DOJ even have to make that decision about whether to hold Garland, their own boss, in contempt. That's going to be a long time from now. If the result of the election is that Trump wins, he'll have his own AG. That could happen. Of course, Garland won't be AG by then. If, on the other hand, Biden wins, whether or not Garland remains AG, DOJ is not going to do anything about it. So this is very much just a political show. It's a way for the Republicans to try to keep this notion of, oh, we're investigating something about President Biden in the limelight. And that's all it's going to be. So that's it for now. Please keep those comments coming. It's really helpful to know what is working, what doesn't work so well, and the kinds of things that you want to hear more about. And I'll talk to you soon.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.